We're launching an investigation into a cultural giant, tracing the evolution of a channel whose initials, well, they once signified everything about youth culture, MTV.
Right.
For you, we're going to trace the network's whole evolution from its birth as music television all the way to its current global presence, which is now dominated by reality programming.
And our mission today is really to uncover not just what the channel played, but how it functioned as a kind of cultural seismograph.
A seismograph, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it was recording and in a lot of cases causing these major tremors in media and political engagement and social norms. We're looking at the legacy, the cultural effects, and the history that allowed it to become this global force.
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning, the exact point of revolution. August 1, 1981 at 12:01 a.m.
The channel launched under the ownership of Warner Amex Satellite Entertainment, and it immediately declared its intentions.
It really did. The very first music video they played was Video Killed the Radio Star by the Bugles.
It's a choice that wasn't just clever. I mean, it was a remarkably prophetic manifesto.
It really was.
It wasn't just some nostalgic piece. It was a clear statement that the visual medium had arrived to fundamentally and forever alter the music industry.
Exactly, and the sources really emphasize this. It was so much more than a song title. For decades, radio stardom meant you had to prioritize sound, lyrics, vocal performance.
Of course.
But with the birth of music television, the power just instantly shifted to visual directors, to stylists, and critically, to the physical appearance of the artist.
If you couldn't make a compelling video, your musical career suddenly faced this massive new hurdle.
A huge hurdle.
And even before that first song, before the Bugles, the network opened with this symbolic piece of imagery that really cemented its identity for years to come.
An image of, well, audacious, almost American cultural imperialism.
That's it. The first visuals were a montage of the Apollo 11 moon landing.
That opening sequence was an incredibly bold piece of branding. It was conceptualized by the original creative director, Fred Seibert.
And it all concluded with that moment, the American flag is planted on the moon's surface.
Right, only for that flag to be dynamically replaced by the jagged, rapidly changing MTV logo.
All while the network's original guitar-driven jingle played.
Yeah.
I mean, the audacity of that symbolism
Is huge.
It's essentially saying, we are planting our flag here, not on physical ground, but in the cultural landscape. We are the new frontier.
And this is what established the Moon Man image, the astronaut who planted the flag, which is still the statuette they hand out at the MTV Video Music Awards.
Creating a deliberate, continuous historical link right back to that revolutionary first moment.
And the sheer volume of that branding was just relentless. That original ID, the moon landing one, it was inescapable.
An edited version of it ran at the top and bottom of every single hour. The sources estimate it ran more than 75,000 times each year.
75,000 times. That level of repetition, it just imprints the brand onto an entire generation.
And that incessant branding was only halted after the tragic Space Shuttle Challenger disaster in January 1986.
It was just deemed inappropriate to keep running a space-themed ID after such a national tragedy, even though that visual had been the channel's defining image for half a decade.
From this aggressive, very bold launch, MTV quickly gained an unprecedented, almost fanatical following.
The speed at which it grew, well, it meant it became a major factor in the rise of cable programming in the United States. It was forcing providers to accommodate this new cultural necessity.
And that cultural muscle helped American corporations dominate the television economy throughout the 1990s, especially in youth programming.
It was global, it was massive, but we do need to pivot here and acknowledge the channel's contemporary reality.
Right. That massive cultural influence it once wielded has fundamentally shifted. The focus on music has, well, it's significantly diminished in favor of original reality programming aimed at young adults.
And the domestic reach reflects that profound change. The network peaked around 2011, available in about 99 million households.
But in today's landscape, which is so fragmented by streaming and digital alternatives, that reach has shrunk dramatically.
As of November 2023, it's down to approximately 67 million pay television households in the U.S.
It's a testament to two things, really. First, just how profoundly the media landscape changed around it, and second, how much the channel itself chose to change.
And to understand that choice, we have to first look at how they built that powerful initial identity.
That brings us directly to our first section, defining that identity through branding and marketing.
The visual bedrock of MTV's revolution was its logo. The channel's first logo, used for over a decade, was revolutionary simply because it was designed to be fundamentally unstable.
This is where the genius of Manhattan Design, the collective with Frank Olinsky, Pat Gorman, and Patty Rogoff really shines. They were working under Fred Seibert's direction.
And the mandate was clear.
Right,
Create something that never felt settled.
right. The design was a block letter M with the word TV just sort of scribbled and spray painted across it. It felt immediate, rough, a little defiant.
And while the initial graphic had the M in yellow and the TV in red, that color scheme was just a starting point. It wasn't the identity.
No, the identity was the shape itself. And what's really fascinating here is the key branding innovation.
If you think about every other major network logo in 1981, NBC, CBS, ABC, they were all static, fixed, designed for consistency.
The MTV logo was the inverse. It was designed to be constantly dynamic. The network's internal mandate was that the logo must be branded with an unlimited variety of colors, patterns, and images on its station IDs.
And we see the incredible breadth of this in the examples the sources point to. You had the 1984 Art History ID, where the logo was rendered in the style of Van Gogh or Picasso.
Or the 1988 Adam and Eve ID, where the M became the apple and the TV was the serpent coiled around it. The logo could be made of fire, liquid, bricks, anything.
The power of this adaptability is that the only constant elements were the general shape and proportions.
This meant the logo was always fresh. It reflected the non-stop changing nature of youth culture and music. It signaled to the audience, we are restless and we are moving forward, just like you.
It was an early form of hyper-relevant marketing, communicating that the channel wasn't some institution, but a living, breathing cultural reflection.
That radical changing logo really defined the visual style of the 80s, but beneath that dynamic surface, MTV faced immense pressure to change its programming content.
And that pressure boiled over when addressing diversity, but first they had to fight just to get on the airwaves. This required one of the most iconic and aggressive ad campaigns in television history. I Want My MTV.
This campaign, which launched in 1982, was strategically crucial for the channel's survival and growth.
The problem was that cable penetration was still relatively low, and cable operators were refusing to add the network to their lineups. They saw it as too niche or unnecessary.
So the core concept was actually rooted in nostalgia. It was developed by George Lois, based on a 1950s commercial for Maypo cereal, I Want My Maypo.
Lois even presented this early, rejected pitch that involved rock stars crying while they delivered the line, suggesting that without MTV, their careers were over.
Thankfully, Lois's associate, Dale Pond, took over the creative leadership and removed the melodrama, replacing it with just pure, aggressive cool.
The goal was simple but incredibly effective. Use the growing cultural cachet of the biggest music stars to create a demand that cable providers just couldn't ignore.
The tactic was pure cultural leverage. They featured major artists who were now dependent on the video medium: David Bowie, Madonna, Mick Jagger, The Police.
Kiss, Billy Idol, Cyndi Lauper, so many others. These stars appeared on screen, encouraging viewers to call their local pay TV providers and explicitly demand the channel.
And the impact was immediate. Viewers, especially teenagers, became insistent. They put this unprecedented pressure on cable operators across the country.
This led to a distribution surge that really helped solidify cable television as the primary vehicle for entertainment for decades to follow.
And the campaign permeated pop culture so completely that its legacy is cemented in music history itself. The slogan became an integral lyric, famously sung by Sting.
On the Dire Straits song, Money for Nothing, from 1985. The song is written from the perspective of a working-class man watching MTV.
Complaining about the easy money musicians seem to make, and ironically, the video for Money for Nothing was the first video played on MTV Europe when it launched 2 years later.
It just underscores that the catchphrase had gone from a marketing slogan to a globally recognized piece of cultural shorthand, representing the channel's dominance.
This successful saturation allowed MTV to evolve, but that evolution also meant eventually breaking with its foundational promise.
We can see this definitive break reflected in the logo changes that followed its peak years.
The shift became official in 2010. The channel eliminated the full-text music television that sat beneath the graphic.
The new primary logo was a revised, cropped version of the original, with the bottom of the M being intentionally cut off.
And this dilution was really a declaration. The act of actively erasing the words music television was an official acknowledgement that the channel's focus had irrevocably shifted to reality, comedy, and general youth programming.
They were no longer primarily a music channel, and the logo reflected that harsh reality.
5 years later, in 2015, MTV International executed another major rebrand with a completely new graphics package. This was notable because it drew heavily on these niche, internet-based aesthetics, vaporwave and sea-punk.
And for you listening who might not be familiar, we should define these. Vaporwave is a musical and visual style characterized by a heavy sense of nostalgia, often for the failed corporate utopias of the 80s and 90s.
Right. It frequently incorporates glitch art, classical busts, and outdated corporate logos like the original MTV logo itself.
And that's precisely why critics analyze this rebrand so intensely. By adopting an aesthetic like Vaporwave, which is fundamentally rooted in a critique of corporate capitalism, critics suggested MTV was trying desperately to remain relevant.
Co-opting a countercultural visual style that satirized its own past.
And along with those graphics came a dramatically modified slogan. It shifted from, "I want my MTV" to, "I am my MTV."
Vice magazine suggested this new slogan perfectly represented the prevailing generational movement towards self-examination, identity politics, and what they called apparent narcissism.
It's a profound shift. The network moved from a collective consumer demand, "we demand this channel," to individual self-declaration, "my identity is tied up in this channel."
The brand always mirrors the generation it seeks to capture. It's always defining itself as a reflection of its audience's current obsession.
So after establishing that bold visual identity, MTV had to define its content. And that's where the network immediately ran into its first massive cultural crisis, the initial, often racialized exclusion of Black artists.
This forced a major industry confrontation. The historical reality is stark. During MTV's first 2 years, between '81 and '83, Black artists were conspicuously absent from the primary rotation.
And network executives used what they call the album-oriented rock format, or AOR, as their justification.
We have to understand AOR in this context. It wasn't just a format. It was a deeply racialized gatekeeping mechanism inherited from FM radio, designed to prioritize rock music, often specifically white male artists over R&B, funk, or pop.
Exactly. The authors Craig Marks and Rob Tannenbaum noted that the channel aired videos by plenty of white artists who were decidedly not playing rock music, which undermines that whole executive defense.
The few Black artists who did achieve rotation early on were Michael Jackson, Prince, Tina Turner, Donna Summer, and Herbie Hancock.
But many major Black artists were outright refused. Rick James's funk powerhouse Super Freak, for instance, was blocked. This exclusion enraged James, who publicly denounced the network for their policies.
And it's important to look at the internal conflict, too. Carolyn B. Baker, MTV's original head of talent and acquisition, who is Black, actually rejected the Super Freak video.
But not because it was Black music. She stated she rejected it because it was, in her words, a piece of crap that showed half-naked women, and she didn't want that representing her people as the first major Black video.
She did, however, question why the network's definition of music had to be so narrowly defined by rock, acknowledging that the network's official party line was based largely on ignorance.
Formal defense offered by executives like Les Garland, then the acquisition's head, was a kind of chicken and egg argument. He claimed there were hardly any videos being made by Black artists because record companies weren't funding them.
But critics pointed out the circular logic. Record companies were reluctant to invest the money needed to produce high-quality videos for Black artists precisely because they knew MTV, the sole major outlet, wouldn't play them.
It created this self-fulfilling prophecy of exclusion that kept non-rock genres locked out.
And this simmering controversy just exploded publicly in 1983 when David Bowie, one of the biggest stars in the world, openly challenged the network about its policies during an on-air interview with VJ Mark Goodman.
That was a powerful, tense, and incredibly critical moment. Bowie didn't accuse them. He simply asked a pointed question about their programming strategy, forcing Goodman to awkwardly defend the network's practices live.
He asked, and I'm paraphrasing the core exchange, "Why are there so few Black artists on the station, especially considering the enormous amount of talented Black American music out there? What kind of message are you sending?"
And Goodman's response was the standard executive line, that the network was trying to program for a very narrow demographic. Bowie simply countered by saying, "I think that's a narrow way of looking at it."
That brief public exchange put the institutional problem under a spotlight from someone with undeniable cultural authority.
That moment generated external pressure. But the true catalyst that broke the barrier came not from culture, but from a corporate financial threat.
Right. Before 1983, Michael Jackson was already a star, but his music was still struggling for consistent airtime on MTV.
So in comes Walter Yetnikoff, the president of CBS Records. Yetnikoff was furious that Jackson's work was being ignored.
In a famous confrontational statement, which the sources note was delivered with a significant amount of profanity, he threatened to pull all of the labels of music.
We're talking massive acts like Billy Joel and Bruce Springsteen, if they didn't immediately start playing Jackson's videos.
That was a tremendous commercial threat. The network was heavily reliant on CBS content, and losing all of it would have immediately crippled their programming schedule.
Yetnikoff's statement was direct. He accused them of not wanting to play music by a black guy, and he forced the financial stakes into the racial discussion.
And although Les Garland later claimed he eventually decided to air Billie Jean without pressure from CBS, that account was openly contradicted by other figures within CBS.
Regardless of the internal narrative, the facts show that Billie Jean was only gradually added to MTV's medium rotation, that's 2 to 3 airings a day, after it had already hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100.
The success was undeniable, even if the channel was reluctant. The Austin Chronicle later summed it up perfectly, describing Billie Jean as the video that broke the color barrier, even though the channel itself was responsible for erecting that barrier in the first place.
But the true cultural and technological game changer was the release of Jackson's elaborate Thriller video late that year.
Thriller was not just a 3-minute clip. It was a 15-minute cinematic short film directed by John Landis and cost over $500,000 to produce.
A monumental budget for the time.
Thriller secured the network's total support because it was undeniable television. It raised the bar for music video production dramatically, setting a new standard.
And after that success, the network's defenses collapsed. The door was finally fully opened for more pop and R&B, including Prince's Little Red Corvette and Lionel Richie's All Night Long.
It showed that quality visual content from diverse artists just could not be ignored.
And it's important to note, this history is not ignored by the corporation today. In 2021, the current MTV Entertainment Group president Chris McCarthy acknowledged the foundational flaw, stating that not playing enough diverse music was one of the bigger mistakes in the early years.
So the inclusion of Michael Jackson and other pop and R&B acts fundamentally changed MTV from a niche rock channel to a mass cultural phenomenon.
And that success led to a shift. MTV moved away from being purely a channel that played blocks of music videos and pioneered event television and eventually reality programming.
MTV's influence wasn't just in making videos important, it was in making television events out of youth culture. The first major annual tentpole was the MTV Video Music Awards, the VMAs, which debuted in 1984.
Specifically designed to celebrate the medium they had created. And that inaugural show provided the network with the instant, unscripted controversy it needed to ensure long-term cultural relevance.
That show featured Madonna's iconic, controversial performance of Like a Virgin.
Let's unpack that specific moment. Madonna performed the song, which was already provocative, dressed in a wedding gown with a boy toy belt buckle.
But the critical boundary-pushing element was when she rolled around on the stage floor, revealing her stockings and garter belt, deliberately creating a sense of implied, visible sexuality that just shocked audiences.
That single performance cemented the VMAs as must-see TV because it established a precedent. Anything could happen, and the line between performance and provocation would constantly be blurred.
And as we mentioned earlier, the award statuette became the Moon Man, directly referencing the channel's original launch ID, tying the brand's future back to its foundational mythology.
Beyond the awards, MTV mastered seasonal event programming. They launched their annual spring break coverage in 1986, setting up in Daytona Beach, Florida, and broadcasting live for 8 hours a day throughout March.
This was a strategic move. Doug Herzog, an MTV vice president at the time, recognized that the network needed to be physically present at these youth culture centers,
transforming the channel from a passive broadcaster into an active participant.
Right. And the successful formula expanded into annual summer branding events that took over the channel's presentation through the 90s and 2000s, with things like Motel California, Summer Share, and Sure Thing.
It was all about immersive marketing.
MTV also demonstrated its capacity for covering massive global live broadcasts. For instance, on July 13th, 1985, MTV broadcast 16 hours of coverage of the Live Aid concerts.
While the major networks like ABC only showed selected highlights during prime time, this cemented MTV as a serious, dedicated broadcaster of music events, especially those with a social mission.
However, that tension between being a serious broadcaster and a commercially driven one surfaced harshly during another major charity event, the Live Aid concerts in 2005.
MTV drew heavy, sustained criticism for its Live Aid coverage. Complaints surfaced online because the network repeatedly cut away from performances, most notably the highly anticipated reunion of Pink Floyd for commercials and VJ commentary.
It prioritized the commercial time slots and MTV's internal branding over the integrity of the live musical experience.
Imagine being a Pink Floyd fan, waiting years for that reunion, only to see the network cut to a commercial. It felt like a betrayal of their entire mission.
And network president Van Toffler had to respond. He acknowledged the error, stating that the network should not have placed such a high priority on showing so many acts at the expense of airing complete sets by key artists.
And as a result, MTV and VH1 quickly aired 5 hours of uninterrupted Live 8 coverage later that week to address the criticism, showing some immediate accountability.
Following these successes, the ultimate shift away from music programming happened gradually. The network began airing syndicated and original scripted content and expanded into film production through MTV Films,
Releasing hits like Beavis and Butthead Do America an Election.
And while the music focus faded, the network did earn recognition for its increasing diversity in its newer programming. A landmark 2010 study by Gilad found that 42% of MTV's primetime programming reflected the lives of gay, bisexual, and transgender people.
42%. That was the highest percentage in the industry at the time, and the highest percentage Gilad had ever recorded for any network.
It demonstrated that even as the channel's format changed dramatically, they maintained a significant commitment to diverse representation, particularly in the realm of identity.
We move now into part 4, where we examine the darker side of MTV's immense influence, exploring major controversies that forced the network to confront its accountability regarding censorship, decency, and social responsibility.
One of the earliest pressures came from external groups in the mid-1980s. This involved watchdog groups like the Parents Music Resource Center, or PMRC.
The PMRC was co-founded by Tipper Gore, wife of then-Senator Al Gore. Their stated goal was to increase parental control over music content they deemed unsuitable for minors.
They specifically criticized MTV for videos they claimed had explicit imagery, references to drugs, sex, violence, Satanism, or anti-religious themes. Their efforts led directly to the now ubiquitous parental advisory warning labels.
This pressure resulted in the channel implementing a strict internal policy. They began refusing to air videos that might depict anti-religious or satanic themes due to concerns over public backlash.
This policy led to MTV banning specific videos like Soundgarden's Jesus Christ Pose in 1991 for being anti-religious, and later Incubus's Megalomaniac in 2004.
What's interesting about this censorship is the inconsistency. While they banned certain videos, controversial artists like Marilyn Manson were still among the most popular rock bands on MTV during the late 90s.
Suggesting the network often balanced moral policing with commercial appeal, deciding which battles were worth fighting.
We also see the network taking swift, public, and punitive action against performers who cross lines on air. Comedian Andrew Dice Clay was notoriously slapped with a lifetime ban after his adult nursery rhymes routine at the 1989 VMAs.
The routine was deemed too offensive, resulting in the network completely censoring it. That ban, a lifetime exclusion, stood for over 2 decades, only being lifted in 2011.
It just illustrates the network's power to erase cultural figures from its platform immediately.
We need to talk about one of the most sensitive controversies, involving the massively popular animated series Beavis and Butthead.
We must recount the genuinely tragic incident that occurred in October 1993, following allegations that a 5-year-old child in Ohio burned down his family's home, tragically killing his younger sister, allegedly after watching the program.
The context here is crucial. The show is extremely popular, known for its destructive humor, and specifically featured the character Beavis shouting "fire" while flicking a lighter in several early episodes.
It is deeply upsetting when a television program, even a satirical one, is linked to such real-world, profound harm, especially involving children.
The network's response to this tragic incident illustrates the immediate need for social accountability. MTV immediately pulled the show from its 7 p.m. time slot and moved it to the much later 11 p.m. slot,
ensuring it was firmly out of reach of younger viewers.
More significantly, Beavis's specific tendency to flick a lighter and yell "fire" was removed from all new episodes. They also went back and exhaustively edited existing episodes to remove all controversial scenes involving fire before they were rebroadcast.
This forceful response highlights the power of media influence and the network's urgent recognition that programming decisions carry immense social weight.
Perhaps the single most influential controversy for the entire landscape of American television was the Super Bowl halftime show in February 2004. Viacom, MTV's parent company, selected MTV to produce the show.
The show, featuring Nelly, P. Diddy, Janet Jackson, and Justin Timberlake, became globally controversial after the final moment when Timberlake tore off a part of Jackson's outfit, briefly revealing her right breast.
An event he immediately described as a wardrobe malfunction.
The consequences of this momentary exposure were immediate, vast, and political. Michael Powell, then chairman of the FCC, ordered investigation the very next day.
The FCC later fined CBS, the network that aired the Super Bowl, a staggering $550,000 for indecency violations, though that fine was eventually reversed.
The cultural fallout was even more significant. Internally, MTV reacted with heavy self-censorship, editing many music videos for sexual content for weeks following the event.
Culturally, the incident dubbed Nipplegate caused a wave of self-censorship on American television unrivaled since the McCarthy era.
The event didn't just affect MTV. It propelled a political debate about media decency directly into the 2004 presidential election cycle. A single moment dramatically altered the regulatory landscape for years.
Finally, in the reality television era, MTV faced significant criticism for one of its most successful new formats, Jersey Shore, which premiered in 2009.
This controversy shifted from moral decency to ethnic sensitivity. The criticism came fiercely from established Italian-American organizations, including Unico National.
Their anger stemmed from the way MTV marketed the show. The promotional materials literally used the word grido, a term generally regarded as an ethnic slur when referring to Italian-Americans.
Unico National formally called the show a direct, deliberate, and disgraceful attack on Italian-Americans and demanded it be canceled.
This presented a different kind of calculation for MTV. They were facing public calls for cancellation and the withdrawal of advertisers. Companies like Dell and Domino's Pizza pulled their ads.
This time, however, the cultural outcome was drastically different. Despite the loss of major advertisers, MTV did not cancel the program.
They issued a press release that essentially defended the cast, stating they took pride in their ethnicity. And Jersey Shore saw its audience explode, remaining one of MTV's top-rated programs for its entire run.
This incident demonstrated a significant inflection point. In the new reality programming model, overwhelming commercial success sometimes outweighed social criticism or concerns over ethnic stereotyping.
It is crucial now to balance the controversies we just discussed with MTV's positive social influence. The channel has a consistent and deep history of promoting social and political activism among young people.
The major vehicle for this was the Choose or Lose campaign, launched in 1992. This is a landmark pro-democracy effort.
This campaign was widely credited with encouraging over 20 million young people to register to vote, demonstrating the network's unique power to mobilize an often disengaged demographic.
And this campaign famously hosted a town hall forum for then-candidate Bill Clinton, where he spoke directly to young voters, legitimizing the youth vote as a crucial political segment.
This wasn't just a PSA, it was direct political engagement facilitated by a pop culture brand.
This engagement continued across decades. We saw campaigns like Fight for Your Rights, the ubiquitous Rock the Vote, and more recent ones like MTV Act and Elect This.
Most recently, in 2020, MTV was even the principal founder of Vote Early Day, targeting young voters to institutionalize earlier engagement in the electoral process.
This long-term, consistent effort is a defining, positive legacy that is separate from its music or reality content.
As the flagship channel shifted away from music, the brand expanded into a portfolio of U.S. sister channels, VH1, CMT, MTV2, and MTV Live for HD programming.
There was one recent notable attempt to return to its roots domestically on the 35th anniversary of the launch in 2016. VH1 Classic was rebranded as MTV Classic.
The concept was pure nostalgia. It focused on 80s, 90s, and 2000s music videos and classic shows like Beavis and Butthead and MTV Unplugged.
But the audience just wasn't there anymore. The deep irony is that the generation that demanded the channel in 1982 preferred to watch that nostalgia on YouTube or streaming services, not on cable.
MTV Classic saw minimal viewership and quickly became the least-watched English-language subscription network rated by Nielsen by the end of 2016.
The network pivoted again in 2017, reorganizing MTV Classic into an all-video network, but the failed rebrand solidified a painful commercial truth. The core mass audience for a dedicated music television cable network had simply vanished.
Lost to the decentralization of digital media.
This brings us to a stark and very recent conclusion in the history of the brand, one that signals the end of its music era on a global scale.
Paramount, MTV's parent company, made a profound announcement in October 2025. They declared that they would stop broadcasting many dedicated MTV music channels, including MTV Music, MTV 80s, and MTV 90s in major international territories.
This termination is set for the end of 2025 across key markets like the UK, Ireland, France, Germany, Poland, Australia, and Brazil.
The only channel remaining will be the flagship MTV HD channel, which airs reality series such as Teen Mom and Geordie Shore.
The stark contrast is that, as of January 2026, music videos are only carried by MTV in 5 regions globally: the United States, Japan, Israel, Taiwan, and India.
The main channel for most of the world is no longer music television in anything but the name inherited from 1981.
Euronews journalist David Marquand acknowledged this cultural moment as signaling the death of communal music discovery.
A powerful phrase that synthesizes MTV's entire legacy. It created a global communal experience around music consumption. It fought a cultural war to break the color barrier, to be seen, to be diverse, and largely won those cultural battles.
Yet its own founding mission was ultimately lost to the changing economics of reality programming and the decentralization of media consumption.
As we conclude this extensive investigation into MTV, we have traced its path from a cultural pioneer, which fundamentally broke the color barrier in popular media and invented the modern video star, to its current status as a reality programming powerhouse.
Forced to manage crises, ranging from the Super Bowl incident to ethnic criticism surrounding Jersey Shore. What we see is a network that, throughout its entire history, consistently served as a powerful, often flawed reflection of youth culture, even as it dramatically abandoned its initial founding mission.
The cultural footprint remains immense. MTV didn't just play music videos, it invented the visual language of pop and cemented the idea that television could be entertainment, a promotional vehicle, and a platform for political activism.
The first video played on the network, Video Killed the Radio Star, was prophetic. The video did indeed kill the radio star, or at least redefine the concept of stardom by making visuals paramount.
So considering the network itself has now systematically terminated its dedicated music programming across key international territories, we have to ask a final question for you, the listener, to consider. If the video killed the radio star and MTV has killed the concept of a mass-market music video channel, what institution, technology, or platform holds the cultural power to define music culture for an entire generation today?
Thanks for listening.